Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the last day of the Lakeshore World Water Day Festival here in Grand Haven, Michigan. We've had a lot of wonderful events across these last couple of days. The auction items are heating up. The bidding has continued. Thank you to those that have made donations: Leslie Newman, Becky Roy, Pam Allard, Kevin Riley, Lisa Petrell, and just any of the organizations. St. John's Episcopal, who let us use their kitchen yesterday to make those pancakes. Seed Research Community in West Michigan, thank you for your time. Our wonderful musicians yesterday. I just can't thank everyone who's helped me pull this off. It's been an odd year trying to plan an event. A lot of events have been canceled, but we tried to make our festival as safe as possible. We will have a couple live speakers about 2 o'clock here on Harbor Island. Andrea Wakener and Andrew Nowicki will be joining us live. In the meantime, we have people who couldn't make it out here today, and for one way or another, and with the pandemic. Thanks, Jamie. With the pandemic, could have warned me. With the pandemic, it would have been nice to be able to include people more in touch, but it was a good day yesterday anyway, and the weather's cooperating fine. So I think what we'll do is I will turn it over to Jillian in the mission control. She is actually another one who is helping tremendously, trying to coordinate all this technology. And I'm going to turn it over to her. Jillian, go ahead and play those videos.
Hello, I'm Leslie Newman, and I'm the president of Wetland Watch that takes care of wetlands. And I'm happy to join you on Lakeshore World Water Day. I would like to talk for a few moments about water. Water is everything. Without it, we are nothing. Life on this planet began with water. 2 hydrogen atoms hooked up with an oxygen atom. How? When? Why? Water formed on a roundish, lumpy rock that was shakily orbiting the sun. Water and the systems that flow from it are earliest life. From earliest life to complex photosynthesis, to amniotic fluid, plant cells and animal cells, the ability of water to change form, to become ice, to become clouds. Water has shaped the earth, carved rivers, moved rocks, make weather. Our job, every generation, must care for it, must love it, must keep it clean, must protect it from oil spills, and protect the wetlands that protect our water. Happy Lakeshore World Water Day.
Representative for the 76th House District in the city of Grand Rapids. I'm so thankful for all of the work that citizens across the state are doing to make sure that we pass forward our inheritance of fresh water and Great Lakes to future generations. We appreciate you. I wanted to take a moment to tell you a little bit about what we are doing here in the state legislature to protect our water resources alongside you. We are working on protecting our water in the public trust. We need to make sure that both Michigan's groundwater and surface water are protected as a part of our shared resource, again, to pass forward to future generations. Line 5 is a critical issue, and we're working hard to hold Enbridge accountable and make sure that we prevent catastrophe at the Straits of Mackinac. We need to mobilize a clean energy future for the Upper Peninsula and Lower Upper Michigan in order to make that happen. And I know that people like you are going to activate in your local communities and ensure that new wind and solar projects can happen across Michigan so we can reduce our dependency on fossil fuels and on Line 5. We are working on water infrastructure and affordability. No one in Michigan should have to worry about their faucet turning on when they're raising kids and working hard to make sure that their families are healthy and safe. And finally, we'll be working on dunes protections. Our shorelines are a critical part of our tourism economy. Our beaches are world class, and we need to make sure our dunes are protected, that those fragile ecosystems that are globally unique remain precious and protected, again, so we can pass forward that inheritance to future generations. We can't do this alone. We need citizens like you to give voice to these issues in Lansing. We need you to communicate with your state representatives, your state senators, and our governor on a regular basis to keep water and water protections top of mind in our communities.
Hi there, I'm Steve Miller and I'm the mayor of the proud city of Ludington, Michigan. Behind me is the entrance to Pere Marquette Lake from Lake Michigan. This is near where the first settlers of this area began the story which became Ludington, Michigan. Trappers, fishermen, lumbermen were all attracted to this area because of the natural resources around the lake, around Pere Marquette River, and then out into Lake Michigan for shipping worldwide. Those trappers and lumberers first arrived here in the 17th century, and the wealth that they exposed in this area continues to serve the people of Ludington well today. None of it would be possible in the slightest without the freshwater resource we have that surrounds the city of Ludington. Even after those industries saw their best days pass, this area remained vital because it was a water resource not only for tourists to fish and hunt around here, but also because of the natural resource of our harbor that made shipping out of here very, very convenient. The city of Ludington and the city of Manitowoc share a seasonal car ferry that today takes cars, campers, some freight, but mostly tourists back and forth between Michigan and Wisconsin on a daily basis during the summer. Again, as some of the manufacturing in this area went away, the city remained vital because of its tourist industry. In just 4 square miles, the city of Ludington has carved out its place in the world as one of the most beautiful and scenic areas any man can find. For those of us who live year-round, the change of seasons is one of the more beautiful annual events, moving from one season to the next. Here we are anticipating spring as the last days of winter are passing, and with that comes the hope that we look forward to every year, that our little town, our city, will continue to be a destination for tourists and investors. And it's those investors who have maybe visited here as tourists, visited here when they have relatives in this area, but have found this is the area that they want to retire into and invest in property and business. The city of Ludington is grateful for that, but again, none of it would be possible if we did not have the fresh water resource that we have and enjoyed for all of these centuries now. Behind me is the mouth of the Pere Marquette River where it enters Lake Michigan. Over my shoulder you can see the lighthouse, which is a natural tourist attraction visited by thousands and thousands of people every summer. Over my shoulder you can see the blue waters of Lake Michigan, and I'm standing on the grounds of the newly refitted Ludington Water Plant. This treatment plant provides fresh water for the entire county, 28,000 plus individuals who need the source and we're proud to provide it for them, not just for the city of Ludington, but for the surrounding area. Now, these calm waters are a little harbinger of what is to come in the summertime, but we will never forget the force of Mother Nature and the work she did on the coastal area, Ludington included. We recovered from that as best we could, and we will continue to recover from it. But Mother Nature has her way, and we live here for a reason. We'll put up with the best of it and the worst of it. However, the best of it by far exceeds what we've seen as far as the worst. You're more than welcome to join us anytime in Ludington. Our doors are always open. We hope you come and visit us for our marinas, our water resources, taste our great drinking water that comes out of this treatment plant. But you are always welcome to come to Ludington, and we hope you will become a permanent resident once you see the gem that we have of a city here. And I hope you'll be one of the fine facets that continue to polish on that gem. I'm standing on the break wall that leads out to the lighthouse, one of the biggest tourist attractions in town. It's a half-mile walk out to the lighthouse and obviously a half-mile walk back, but well worth the trip on a very nice summer day. Beautiful place to watch the sunset over the lake, but one of the best places to watch the sunset. You can take your place with hundreds of others every night as the sun goes down right here on the beach in Ludington. The Ludington Department of Public Works works tirelessly to make sure that the beach itself is pristine so that when you visit it in the future, you'll have just as great as experience as those who have visited us in the past. Thank you for allowing me a little bit of time to share what our beautiful town is like. Without Lake Michigan and all the fresh water around it, Ludington would not exist. We're grateful every day. Please come visit us and see for yourself what a beautiful town we have here.
Welcome to the Climate Stick presentation for the Lakeshore Water Day Festival. You're probably familiar with the Climate Stick. It's a tool for discussing climate, and it's also the symbol of the mass movement to end the burning of carbon. Quickly, the green, the black, the yellow, and the red all represent CO2 in the atmosphere in the past, the present, and the future. And what we use the Climate Stick for is to engage people in discussions. And if you are a person who wants to discuss what's going on with your waterfront property, then you can use the Climate Stick and your own detail to make a presentation that unites your feelings about your immediate circumstances and those issues that are affecting the whole world. So we use a special tool that we've developed to help people get better stories, and it's called the Sustainability Stool. The Sustainability Stool is how we help people get their stories so they can talk about the Climate Stick and the issues of climate that are a concern for them. It starts with one leg where you learn the Climate Stick and add your own knowledge about climate so you have a climate story. And then you educate yourself and others about what's in your climate story so it flows naturally. Then the second leg is where you add your feelings and decisions about your own carbon footprint so that the daily things that you do can inform your story and make it more interesting. And when you're comfortable with this, and you should rehearse it with your friends and your relatives, then you can go to the political groups or the educational groups that you belong to and tell that story and help get people to understand that talking about climate change every day is an important way that we build the mass movement to end the burning of carbon. There are many places where you can get information about what's going on with the shorelines in Michigan. The EPA has sections of a website where the lake-wide action and management plans are given. And there are many of those which describe a situation and the plans which are in place or have been conducted to improve the situation. Information like this and anything you can get when you Google different locations can be made part of your Climate Stick story. And so you can draw attention to what's going on locally and combine it with the activity that is global. One of the main programs of the Climate Stick Project is getting high school Climate Stick clubs in place to do grassroots organizing with the most energized cohort of people we have, and that is young people who are students. And we have created a Climate Stick Club in several high schools and colleges, and we hope to have many more. Each club has a shirt like this, which has at the back a list of activities involved with communicating to political types about how the students feel about climate change. And we hope that through the use of our website and connecting with us to get climate sticks and to have supporting information, that we will be able to generate a mass movement among young people in Michigan to take care of not only the beaches, but all the land and water issues that face them in the future. The website is www.climatestick.org, and we hope you get information there to make your climate story even more interesting and successful.
Hi everyone, I'm back. Thanks Pat, and thank you Leslie for those beautiful poems and letting us know about the city of Ludington. Mayor Steve Miller, thank you for sharing your recording with us. And the Climate Stick Project is kind of really a neat way to have a visual representation of just how important what we're doing is as far as taking care of our climate. And of course, the Earth being 2/3 water is part of that important mission for the Climate Stick Project. The Climate Stick Project founder, Pat, that you just met on that video, and his helper, his co-founder, Tony, were over with our pancake breakfast doing our kitchen as part of our kitchen pancake brigade yesterday. They came all the way over from Bay City, so we're very thankful and grateful for their time and talents yesterday. Hey Jay, can you watch we got a lot of wind out here today, so things are blowing around. I wanted to take a time, I'm a retired preschool and kindergarten teacher, and so I'm going to take a minute and share a couple of really neat stories with you. One is called The Earth Book, and the other is called The Earth is Good. You're more than welcome to come back later too, or find us on Facebook and YouTube. The Earth Book by Todd Parr. I take care of the earth because I know I can do little things every day to make a big difference. I use both sides of the paper and bring my own bags to the market because I love the trees and I want the owls to have a place to live. I turn off the faucet while I brush my teeth and use less water for my bath because I love the fish and I want the oceans to stay blue. I take the school bus and ride my bike because I love the stars and I want the air to be clear so I can see them sparkle. I try to eat every bite on my plate and save my leftovers because I love watching things grow. And I want there to be enough food for everyone. I remember to turn off the lights and shut the refrigerator to save energy because I love the polar bears and I want the snowmen to stay cool. I throw garbage in the trash can and recycle glass, aluminum, paper, and plastic because I love to to walk barefoot in the grass. And I don't want to move to Mars. Most of all, I help take care of the earth because I want us all to be happy and healthy. 10 ways I can help the earth. Turn off the lights. Recycle. Save my leftovers. Be nice to the worms. Yeah, don't step on the worms this time of year. Share a book. Plant a tree. Use both sides of the paper. Save water. Clean up the trash. Put my underwear in the freezer when it's hot. I don't know if I would do that. Every one of us can help protect the earth and make it feel good. Remember, if we take care of it, it will take care of us. Love, Todd. Todd Parr is the one who wrote this book. The other story I wanted to share is The Earth is Good. The sun is good, the earth is good. The trees and birds and bees are good. The flowers are good. The mouse, the worm, the soil are good. The wind and rain are good. Have you ever gone out in the rain and just stood there? It's wonderful. The rivers are good. The fish are good. The oceans and whales are good. The mountains are good. The sun is good. The day is good. The moon, the stars, the night are good. The earth is good. And you are good. These books are full of hope and full of things that anyone can do to help the environment. Next, we're going to hear from a couple of other people that have some really good news and some hope for the environment. Jillian, take it away in the studio.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Lakeshore World Water Day Festival 2021. Thank you very much for the opportunity to talk here to you about my work on water, specifically restoring Muskegon Lake. This year's theme for World Water Day is valuing water. And there are many different ways in which we can value water. We can value it ecologically. We can consider all of the living things that depend on fresh, clean water for their survival. We can also value it ethically. We can think about the responsibilities we have towards being good stewards of our water resources. We can also think about water and value it economically. And this is what we're going to focus on in this talk here today for World Water Day, is the economic value of water. And that specifically, we're going to talk about the value of Muskegon Lake here in West Michigan. For decades, Muskegon Lake's main value was as a place to dump industrial pollution and dispose of wastes. For example, in the early days of the city of Muskegon, it was a logging town. And as you can see here in this picture, logs were floated down the Muskegon River and processed there on the shores of the lake. And a lot of that debris from those sawmills ended up filling in the shoreline and extending the shoreline. So there's a lot of residual pollution in the lake going back as far as the lumbering era. But after that, there was still a lot of industrial development that happened in the 19th and 20th centuries. For example, the Sappy paper mill was on the shores of Muskegon Lake, and it's since been decommissioned. But that was a main source of pollution, industrial pollution into the lake. And then there were lots of other factories, such as the Muskegon Boiler Works, noted in this photo, or Continental Motors, lots of industrial sites that used the lake to dispose of their industrial pollution. And this went on for decades, and it really affected the ecological integrity of the lake. And we're still dealing with that today. By the way, all of these photos in this slide come from the Hackley Public Library. Charles Hackley was one of those lumber barons who made his fortune during that logging era. So not only do we have some of the great civic works like the Hackley Public Library, but we have legacy pollution as well. And some of that legacy pollution shows up here in Muskegon as the designation of an area of concern. So the EPA has designated dozens of sites throughout the Great Lakes area as an area of concern. That means that human activity has impaired its beneficial uses. Things like being able to drink the water, or go fishing in the water, or go swimming in the water. Those are a few of the beneficial uses. And here in Muskegon Lake, the historical pollution has impaired those beneficial uses. Now, in the 21st century, we're trying to roll back the clock and restore those beneficial uses by improving the quality of the lake. But, as you might expect, restoring Muskegon Lake's quality costs money. In 2008, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration allocated $10 million for Muskegon Lake's restoration. And this project funding focused on two elements. First was to remove the contaminated sediments. All of those years and decades of industrial pollution have resulted in pollution that has settled in the sediment, in the mud and sand and muck down at the bottom of the lake. So to really restore the quality of the lake, all of that polluted sediment needs to be removed. The second element is restoring the shoreline to a more natural condition. Much of the shoreline had been hardened or industrialized during the decades of industrial activity on the lakeshore. And a hardened shoreline means that you have a hard surface right up to the edge of the water, then maybe some steel or rock that separates the land from the water, and then you have a drop off, you have deep water after that. There's no transition between land and water. And that allows for land-based pollution to run off directly into the water, and there's no vegetation to stop it, and it also prevents, there's no habitat, right? There's the habitat of that natural vegetation on the shoreline that's so critical as a fish nursery and for frogs and for birds. That's missing. So this project is to restore that natural shoreline to a softened, more natural condition. So eliminating that hardened surface and having a nice vegetated transition from land to water where that vegetation can intercept runoff pollution from the land, but also provides a buffer zone and critical habitat for lots of aquatic species. So those are the two main elements of the restoration: removing the contaminated sediments and restoring the shoreline to a more natural condition, right? So NOAA spent $10 million of public money to achieve these two goals in the hopes of removing Muskegon Lake from that list of areas of concern. Improving the lake's quality delivers a lot of benefits. Maybe you have been experiencing more activity on Muskegon Lake yourself, right? People have been boating and fishing more. People are walking and biking along the improved shoreline trail where that shoreline has been put into more natural condition. You can see behind the walker there that there's no longer a hardened shoreline that's been softened, and that buffering vegetation is there in place that provides that transition zone and habitat, critical habitat for lots of aquatic organisms. So we would expect more of these activities to be happening as the lake improves in its quality. We would also expect housing prices to rise. If the lake is seen as more of an asset than, a place to dump your pollution, well, then people who enjoy fishing and boating, people who enjoy access to the biking and walking trail would be seeking to live in a place where they can do that, right? So we would see demand for houses that have that amenity to be rising, right? So we would see a positive effect on home sale prices. So those are three things that we can look at in terms of the economic value of Muskegon Lake. The question is, can these be quantified? We know that people enjoy recreating, people enjoy looking at the lake when it's clean. If it's a stinky, smelly lake, people don't enjoy it so much, but a clean lake is very much an amenity to a neighborhood. So can these be quantified? And the answer is yes. My colleagues and I at GVSU, Grand Valley State University, estimated the economic benefits of some of Muskegon Lake's improvements. We started, and we used two techniques to look at two different groups of benefits. First, we looked at the real estate improvements, right? The rising real estate, or expected rising real estate prices. And we did that through a property value model. Now, homes have different characteristics. You might have a 2-bedroom house, or a 3-bedroom house, or a 4-bedroom house. It might have 1 bathroom or 2 bathrooms, big lot size, close to downtown, on a bus line, things like that. Those all affect the property value. Environmental amenities also affect the property value. So if we looked at a large enough group of home sales, we can start to tease apart how each of these different elements affects the property value. Like, how much does an extra bedroom add to a typical house? How much does an extra square foot of yard add to a house? And in this case, when the shoreline was restored to a more natural condition in that neighborhood, how much did that add to a house's sale price? So we did that using a property value model. We also looked at recreation, and we did this using a travel cost model. So these two people who are out there fishing likely spent some money, right? They bought gas for their boat, maybe they bought bait, maybe they bought lunch, and they gave up time to go fishing. That time is worth money too. They could have been earning money at their jobs. Maybe they gave up some vacation time to do this. So time is valuable, and we can quantify that economic value of time and roll that into this travel cost model of recreation. How much did they give up in order to spend the afternoon fishing? So we did this a few years ago, and we found that restoring the natural shoreline, which is now completed, that increased the average home sale price by more than $2,000. There are more than 3,000 residential parcels in the study area, so the total value of shoreline restoration was more than $7 million in additional home sale property values. So that's a substantial amount, right? They spent $10 million to restore Muskegon Lake, and we already see just in additional property values, more than $7 million of additional property value just from the places where the shoreline has been restored. So that tells us that people find a shoreline, a more natural shoreline, a desirable environmental attribute. They're willing to pay more to live in a neighborhood where the shoreline is restored as opposed to an industrial hardened shoreline. And that suggests that this is money well spent. We also estimated the economic value of recreation. And we found that each visit to Muskegon Lake has an economic value of about $56. People visited Muskegon Lake more than 4 million times a year, right? Many people visit multiple times, dozens of times per year, especially residents that live close by. But there are people that come from out of town as well. Like these fishermen might have come from, they might have driven an hour away to go fishing at Muskegon Lake. We also found that visits are up 11% compared to 2009 since the lake restoration started. So people are perceiving that the quality of the lake is better, the fishing opportunities are better. This trail that goes around the lake is a very useful and well-received amenity. So visits are up more than 11% since 2009. And when you put this all together, we found that the total annual value of Muskegon Lake recreation is $27 million. That's additional money and opportunity cost that is being given up to go to additional recreation activities. So people clearly perceive Muskegon Lake to be a valuable environmental asset, and they are willing to pay for it. So clearly, people put a high value, a high economic value on Muskegon Lake. It's no longer just a dumping ground for industrial pollution. A cleaner lake benefits everyone. It benefits the people who live there and, walk on the paths every day after work, the people who live in the neighborhoods who have now this nice vegetated shoreline that's a scenic amenity, where the fishing is better. It benefits everyone. And now Muskegon Lake is an asset for economic development rather than an eyesore, that's a detriment. So this is really the future of Muskegon, and lots of our lakeshore communities is in, developing this blue economy. How do we take advantage of these lakes and shorelines as an asset rather than a place to dump pollution? So clearly, economic value is important. But as I said earlier, when we talk about valuing water, we can value it many different ways. Economically is one that we focused on here, but we can also value it ethically. And environmental ethicist Paul Taylor talks about a duty for restorative justice when it comes to pollution issues. Restorative justice is about restoring balance after a wrong or making amends by compensation or reparation. So one way to think about the work at Muskegon Lake, the restoration work, is from the economic lens, right? We're putting in this money as a cost, and then we're reaping some benefit. But we can also think about it as an ethical choice that we're making. We are making amends to Muskegon Lake itself by removing that pollution. So restoring Muskegon Lake is an ethical act of restorative justice. So that's another way to think about it. And I think that's a good way to think about it. We are valuing water and our relationships with water in a new ethical perspective. So thank you very much for the opportunity to share our research on restoring Muskegon Lake and the economic analysis. I hope you're enjoying the activities associated with the Lakeshore World Water Day Festival, and I'd like to thank the organizers for putting this all together. I really appreciate it, and thank you very much for watching today. Have a great day.
Hi, thank you, Eric, for sending that in for us. The theme for World Water Day this year is actually valuing water. If you aren't familiar with World Water Day, I'm not too surprised. In 1992, World Water Day was established by the United Nations as a way to focus attention on the sustainability of drinkable natural resources. It's just a basic way to look at it. Basically, they wanted the world to know that they will stand for the water as a human right. It's not a commodity, although it's being used that way. But what Eric's video shows us is that when we invest in the water and the economic importance that we put on our environment, everyone wins. The water wins, the people that depend on that water win. It doesn't make any sense to not cherish and respect the water. One way to value the water is to listen to people that have actually lived within these different watersheds, whose life has been altered by their access to clean water, and who continue to fight and work and pray for their own water and their water resources. They understand that water is life. They stand for water when the rest of us can't. These people are called water protectors. A lot of people may have heard of water protectors simply from Standing Rock Reservation in 2016. I have friends that were actually there. I have friends that weren't there, but like me, watched as native people's water sources were in danger, as well as their sacred spaces. If someone were coming to stomp through your home, or your ancestral home, or going to dig up and misplace your loved one's remains, you'd be called to action. And so were thousands of people in the summer and fall of 2016. Some of those people were children. And I have two books, again, I'm going to share with you about the children. One was actually written by Aslan Tudor. The pictures in this are a little dark, but it gives you a great perspective, and the perspective of an 8-year-old. A water protector is someone who protects water from getting polluted. Companies are polluting the water by building things like oil pipelines under or near waterways. This is the Cannonball River in North Dakota. As Native Americans, we want to protect the earth and water from getting polluted and harmed, because these are sacred lands and waters to us. We want to keep our homelands from getting harmed. These are Aslan's words. The Standing Rock Sioux Tribe is a native nation of Dakota and Lakota peoples. Their reservation is located in North and South Dakota. Their lands used to be much bigger because of the Treaty of Fort Laramie, an agreement made a long time ago. Look at all the water and all the rivers. People a long time ago did not respect that and took the land without permission, so that the reservation became much smaller. The land is called unceded treaty territory because the Lakota people did not give up that land. A company was trying to build an oil pipeline under the Missouri River, which is Standing Rock's drinking water supply. The pipeline is called the Dakota Access Pipeline. The land and water where the pipeline was being built is their treaty. When pipelines are built, they end up leaking and polluting the land and water. If the Dakota Access Pipeline were to leak, it would make the water for Standing Rock Sioux Tribe undrinkable. In Lakota, Mini-Wachoni means water is life. Youth from Standing Rock started a water protector camp to protect their water. It was called Sacred Stone Camp. They asked people to come and join them to help them protect their water. A lot of people came to help, and a new camp was started. It was called Ochedi-Sakowin Camp. I went to North Dakota to the Ochedi-Sakowin Camp in August 2016. I was 8 years old. I went with my mom, my little sister, and some friends. Every day we went to the gates where they were building the pipeline. The morning started with traditional prayers. Each day we were trying to stop them from building the pipeline. The kids there helped protest and also played together. We sang traditional songs with everyone. We painted messages of resistance and posted flags from their native nations. Every day, warriors on horses rolled through camp and led everyone on a march up to the pipeline construction site. They painted their horses and faces with traditional designs. One of them told me I have warrior hair because I keep it long. In camp, we slept in a tent. Others slept in teepees, buses, and RVs. We ate food together, and at night we had big fires and met Native Americans from all over. People sang dances and sang ground dance songs at night. Camp started small and there were only other Native Americans there. Then camp grew rapidly. After we left, camp grew to around 10,000 people and it became one of the largest cities in North Dakota. They built a traditional Lakota school, several kitchens, a general store, a medical compound, and many other things. We came back in October 2016. Camp was huge when we got there. There were around 5,000 people there. There were a lot of teepees and tents. It was much bigger than in August. There were Native people and non-Native people there this time. I went to the traditional Lakota school that was in camp. It was called the Defenders of the Water School. I learned about a type of corn made by the Pueblo people. We sang Lakota songs. They had a library in the school. I read books by Native authors. My mom worked in the medical tent. She is an EMT. We got to stay in a teepee with a friend. It was warm inside because there was a fire. It was pretty cold outside, so it felt nice to sleep in the teepee. The pipeline was still being built. People from camp went to different construction sites each day. It wasn't too safe for the kids, so we stayed in camp. Between August 2016 and February 2017, tens of thousands of people passed through this camp. People came from every continent of the world. Celebrities, politicians, tribal representatives from over 500 Native nations. It was the largest Native gathering in history and the largest unity between different Native nations we have ever had. The pipeline was delayed but finished in summer of 2017. The Standing Rock Sioux tribes are still fighting it in court. So this is the Standing Rock Sioux tribe that they're talking about. This talks about children water protectors, and at the end of this book, this is actually a Caldecott Honor Medal book now too, a Caldecott winner, excuse me. And I love this book, and in the back it talks about being an earth steward and water protector pledge. I will do my best to honor Mother Earth and all its living beings, including the water and land. I will always remember to treat the earth as I would like to be treated. I will treat the winged ones, the crawling ones, the four-legged, the two-legged, the plants, trees, rivers, lakes, the earth, with kindness and respect. I pledge to make the world a better place by being a steward of the earth and a protector of the water. So if you have a young person that you have that you love, this is a great book. Water is the first medicine, Nicole has told me. We come from water. It nourished us inside our mother's body as it nourishes us here on Mother Earth. Water is sacred, she said. We stand with our songs and our drums. We are still here. The river's rhythm runs through my veins, runs through my people's veins. My people talk of a black snake that will destroy the land. Spoil the water, poison plants and animals, wreck everything in its path. Does that look familiar? Those of us that have been trying to stand against Line 5 have recognized what that black snake looks like. When my people first spoke of the black snake, they were told that it wouldn't come for many, many years. Now the black snake is here. Its venom burns the land, courses through the water, making it unfit to drink. Think of the Kalamazoo River. Take courage. I must keep the black snake away from my village's water. I must rally my people together. To stand for the water, to stand for the land, to stand as one against the black snake. We stand with our songs and our drums. We are still here. It will not be easy. We fight for those who cannot fight for themselves, the winged ones, the crawling ones, the four-legged, the two-legged, the plants, trees, rivers, lakes. We are all related. Tears like waterfalls stream down, tracks down my face, tracks down my people's faces. Water has its own spirit, Nicomas told me. Water is alive. Water remembers. Who came before us all, she said. We stand with our songs and our drums. We are still here. We are stewards of the earth. Our spirits have not been broken. We are water protectors. We stand. The black snake is in for the fight of its life. And if you look, there's pictures of people from all different walks of life in these pictures. Thank you for letting me share these really important, beautiful stories with you about water protection. Next, I believe our video is from Beatrice Manasseh Jackson, and she's going to talk about the native connection to the water.
Oui, bonjour. My name is Beatrice Manasseh Jackson, and I am Tlingit Shimshin and Akapna. My people are from the Northwest Coast. And I am a Three Fires Medewan grandmother, and this is my authority staff that I am able to come and share what I can with you. And I just want to let you know that I was given tobacco to speak, and with everything, tobacco always goes first. And so I'm very appreciative of the planners here and the respect that they show for our traditions. I grew up in Yakima, Washington, over by the Rocky Mountains and in the sandy kind of the bowl of Washington State. Del Monte Foods has orchards all over the place, but really we didn't have grass on our lawns. You know, we didn't have running water, and when I was born, they placed me in a cradle board, and the cradle board my mom would take with me when she was working in the hops or the strawberries, and would set me up, and I would watch her do many things. I grew up in, I was a first generation language speaker, which meant that my mother never spoke the language. English was not her natural language. So when I grew up, things were a lot different. We didn't have running water. So when we went to get water, I went across the street to my grandmother's house, and she had a beautiful well, and you'd be a rope attached to the long bucket, and we would bring that bucket, and it would touch the bottom with a good splash, and you could hear it clinking and making those kind of noises, and then we would draw it up like that, and we would put that water into our bucket and take it home. That's the water that my mother cooked with. That's the water that when we got finished playing outside, we washed our hands with. The wash tubs that we used in those days, we would fill them with water and put it in this big black kettle, and we'd warm that up and heat it up to wash our clothes, and then we would rinse in it. When all the washing got done, and we would rinse them out with more water, and that was our swimming pool. That was really, really a fun time growing up in Yakima, Washington. I remember the most beautiful thing about living in Washington was the rivers. How the sound of the rivers was beauty beyond compare. And we would go up to, in our cars, and we'd go to the top of the mountains, and we would hear so many different noises up there. We would hear the noise of an eagle going by, and we'd hear all the sounds of the birds during harvest time. So water meant everything to us, everything. And when we got that water from our well, the water was so icy cold, like this copper vessel. In this copper vessel, if you zoomed up on it, you could see how cold it is and how steamy it is. But when we drink of this water, it is so refreshing. And it always reminds me of home, this beautiful sacred water. I was asked to come here because I am a water walker. And as a member of the Three Fires Medewan Lodge, I have to go back in time to, I'm a traditional sun dancer. And that means that as a sun dancer, we go without water for 4 days and 4 nights. We go without food for 4 days, and we dance, and we blow our eagle whistles. I like being in this environment underneath a tree because our trees are sacred to us. So I'm at the Sundance, and I think it was about my 3rd or 4th year, and I danced with a really great lady. Her name was Josephine Mendamen. And Josephine was one of our elite grandmothers of the Medewan Lodge. And she was fluent in her language. I was learning her language and the songs. And so after we danced, the first round, getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning, and we'd have a break, and it would be somewhere around noon, so that the drummers could go off and eat, and we would still be without food. But that's when our traditional leaders would come and speak to us. So we're laying down under the rest arbor, and it really felt good, to have that time to rest. And a man got up to speak, and his name was Eddie Benson Benet Badwewidan. And he said, everything is not always going to be the same, that things are going to change. And the things that we take for granted are going to cost us a lot of money. And there will be a time when 1 ounce of water will cost an ounce of gold. And that time is coming upon us, because what are we doing to the water? We look at the water, and we look around the cities, and we see manufacturings, we see a lot of businesses that are using water to make their products, and they're polluting our waters so much that in the day when I grew up in Yakima, and I could go to that river and dip my cup in there and drink that water, I'm unable to do that now because the water's polluted. So what do? Well, they have water manufacturers that, put the water through a process and osmosis, and, they put water in little plastic containers, and you buy that water. Sometimes it's 99 cents, according to what kind of water that you want to buy. If it's, really processed, and they'll put certain chemicals in it, or they'll put flavoring in it, you'll have that water, for your trips. When you go out of town, when you go out of the country, you have to bring your own water. And the thing is that you get finished with the water bottle, and what do? It gets tossed. And it's not always, recycled. You have water bottles that are showing up in our lakes and showing up in our oceans, and the plastic is not really recyclable. It doesn't go down to nothing. It takes hundreds and hundreds of years to do that. But when you're sun dancing and doing without water, you think of that water. Water would taste so good right now. And I don't want there to ever be a time that my grandchildren will be without water. I don't want that time to ever come. So the Grand Chief, Bud Wayweden, said, well, what are you going to do about it? It's nice to say water is life. It's nice to say that we got to protect the water, but what are you going to do to call attention to the water? What are you going to do? So I'm there with Josephine and her sister, and we're just resting. And we always listen to our chief, Bud Wayweden, and we're talking about what we can do for the water. And Josephine's sister said, well, we have our copper buckets we use for ceremony. Why don't we walk with the water and just walk around and talk about the water and tell people water is good, water is life? And then it was like something went off in Josephine's mind, and she smiled. We'll take this to the Medewan Lodge. And I knew that she had already decided what we were going to do. So we have a group of women in the Medewan Lodge, and they're called Midewanikwes. Their whole job is to take this water and to pray for it, and then share it with the people. We have songs that go along with the water, and it's smudged with a medicine that we call sweetgrass. So we were in a perfect position as women. No longer were women sitting in the back and not allowed to speak. We now have grandmothers, and the grandmothers will say, this is what we're going to talk about. So we had a meeting, and Josephine said, I am going to petition the lodge for support, and we would like to walk around the lake. And there's a lot of murmurs, and people are thinking about, walking from Bad River, Wisconsin, from that very first lake. And a lot of women were saying, yeah, we could do that. We could start from here. Ooh, good idea. If we came to winter ceremonies, we could start out in the snow and start walking. So there was support. We are now in the Medewan Lodge, which is a beautiful structure made out of saplings, and we have a sacred fire in the middle, and at the one end of the lodge is our grandmother Josephine, and she's talking to us about beginning the very first water walk. And we kind of gave that question to the lodge, and it was supported. Okay, that's what we're going to do. So we took a bucket like this, and this is a solid copper bucket. Comes from Caldwell coppers. And it was decided that we would take water from Bad River, Wisconsin. We would actually dip that into the water there. And each of us would take turns walking with the water. And what we would do is that we asked for our men for support. This is going to be a really long journey for us, so we need you men that can come and help. And someone gave Josephine, gave her a staff. And with that staff there, people would donate eagle feathers to go on it. And they would ask the men to carry the staff for us, if there was men to do that. And the eagle feathers would be taken care of and would help guide us upon our journey. And so we started out with song and smudge and food offerings and really all that good things. And the thing about Medewan women is that we are women who wear skirts. And when we do our work, it's said that our hem of our skirt will touch the ground and will connect us with our Earth Mother. And when we do our work and stand up, we are also connected with the Creator. And so a woman would carry this bucket, and starting at early, early morning with a smudge, she would get up. And if the men weren't up, too bad. Grandma Josephine would grab the staff and grab the bucket. 4:30 in the morning, she's smudged, she's walking. And not walking at a grandmotherly pace as you know it. She's walking really fast. And she's walking fast because we are going in that direction, and we are watching the sun come up, and we are praying. We are praying for the water that we love, the water that we hold sacred, will continue to forever flow for our children, our grandchildren. We're praying that that would be so. And why do we do this? Well, I don't know. We're modern grandmothers. They went to a conference and they heard a Japanese doctor, Emoto, speaking. And he said, you know, the water you drink is alive. The water has feelings. The water has medicine. And no one really believed him. They said, if you prayed for that water and drank it, you would receive healing for your entire body. You know, you would feel well. You would do well. And to prove that, he would take water and he would do different songs, and he would sing to the water. Hey, hey, what's the matter with your mind, and you're fine and you look so divine. He'd sing Come and Get Your Love, you know, with one rock group. And then he would dun 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 dun. He'd play music from Mozart. And then he would play music from Black Sabbath. Ow, you know, and it's really angry music. And then he would play different sounds. And when that sound was sounded, he would freeze that water. And when he froze the water, then he would take out a little bit of it and look under the microscope to see what the design was. And when it was something beautiful, like Come and Get Your Love or Beethoven, the crystals formed our most beautiful, beautiful crystals. But when he did Black Sabbath, it was distorted and it looked horrible. And so he said, water is life. What do we do? Well, we talk to the water. First thing you do is you say, thank you, water. Thank you, water. I love you and I respect you. He said, you just do those simple things at home when you're drinking your water. I love you, water. I thank you, water. I respect you, water. So one of our Medequays, her name was Doreen Day, she was at this conference. And she was there and she heard what Mr. Emoto said. And she told her grandson, we're going to do this every day. So, little grandson, I love you, water. I thank you, water. I respect you, water. And so Doreen is going, yeah, that's right. Grandma, wouldn't it be more fun if you said it real fast? Okay, let's do it. So the little boy would go, I love you, water. I thank you, water. I respect you, water. I love you, water. I thank you, water. I respect you, water. And he would do that and they would laugh. And then they would drink their water. So after a while of doing this, the little grandson, he says, Grandmother, wouldn't it be nice if we spoke to the water and we thanked it in our own language? We thanked it in Ojibwe. Wouldn't that be nice, Grandmother? So she's thinking, okay, let's do this correctly. So she goes and asks her elders, and they said, yes, we can do this. And so she says, Nibi gizage iku. I love you, water. Gijawe nemiku. And she says it in the language. So every morning they wake up. Nibi gizage igu, gimi kwachawe nimigu, gijawe nimigu. And they would do that. And then the grandson said, Grandmother, wouldn't it be nice? Don't you think the water would like it if we sang to it instead of just saying it? Wouldn't it be nice if we did that? So Doreen Day, she says, yes, grandson, this will truly be great. So she goes out, and if you don't know Doreen Day, she's a magnificent singer on the powwow circuit. She has a great, great voice. And finally she comes up with a tune. And that's a song that we do for the water ceremony. And it's a song that anyone of any nation can do. They can sing this song. They are welcome to it. And they're also encouraged to sing it in any language. And as part of your morning waking up time to have that water. So she would sing it. You don't have to have a copper cup to put your water in. You could have any kind of a cup, plastic cup, whatever, and you would sing. Same as saying, I love you, water, I thank you, water, I respect you, water. This is what Doreen brought back to us. We have water songs in Ojibwe that are Medewan water songs, and they're only allowed to be sung in our Medewan lodge. And all the protocols are done. The water is gathered from an artesian well or spring, and the water is kept in these beautiful vessels, and they are smudged, they are loved, and they have women that know how to lift the water and get the prayer for the water. We have prayers that we ask permission to speak to our Creator and to bless all the waters of Zabing Oma Aking Bamijuan and to make our water sacred. We have those things. But for the average person, if you just do one thing, maybe you don't remember all the words for that, but you just say, thank you, water, that is enough. And so she gave this to us when we began our water walk. And it was really nice because the whole thing about the water walk is that you're spreading the love of water to all the communities you're walking through. You're stopping by a gas station, you're on the road, and cars are honking, trucks are honking their horns, and you're in these beautiful flowing skirts, and with our men carrying the sacred staff, and got a little bit of media attention too. So when you get to a community, you talk about the water. What are you doing to ensure that you have good water in your community? What are you going to ensure that there are beautiful things in this water and all the other things are out? And did you know that if you put water in a copper cup, room temperature overnight, there's something that happens to the water and it becomes purified and you can drink it. People all over the world do this. If you went to India, if you went to Africa, they knew the secret of the copper vessels, that it would purify your water. And some of the water was not very, very good to drink, but they did this on faith. Why did they do it on faith? Because someone told them. Somewhere, a grandmother in India, in Africa, and in Cherokee, Alabama, or someone is telling them that water is good. Water is good. You don't need those other things. Drink water. It's good. Water is life. So we go on these water walks, and sometimes there's a whole lot of people, and the women would take turns taking the bucket of water and carrying it. And as they were carrying it down the road, they would pass a little stream or tributary, and they would take their tobacco and they'd put it in that water and say, "Thank you, water." And they would do it every time they crossed water. And it was really nice. You would see people taking turns carrying this, and the water would never stop. If you were taking the water bucket and I'd pass it to you, you would keep it going. You could hear that little slush, slush, slush. And the same with the eagle staff. That would continually go, and you would walk maybe 2 miles, and then someone else would take the bucket from you. And there'd be a car up there, women and men ready to go. "They're coming, they're coming, they're coming." And they're standing up there all nice and proud, ready to accept the water bucket. And this would go on for miles and miles. Somewhere around noon, they would stop somewhere and open up the trunk of their car and have a little bit of food. It wasn't always like hot food or the food that we normally eat. It could be just a sandwich or, potato salad on ice or whatever. Or whatever people donated. People donated food for our walkers. Someone would come and they'd have strawberries or blueberries, or they might have baked bread, or they would have something for us, and we shared it like it was, we were living the good life, having beautiful water and having food and being able to share the story that water is life. So we'd walk around all the lakes. The first lake that we walked around is very mountainous. It's going through Thunder Bay. And by that time, all of our marvelous walkers have dwindled, and it's not the weekend yet. So they get the youngest walker, and she's got to walk up this real hard mountain road. And that would be me. So I'm walking up there, and I feel really blessed and strong to go up this way and to get my legs accustomed to walking, 20, 30 miles a day. That was really something. And you would walk on that lake, and we would finish up back around that lake where we came at Beaver River, Wisconsin. And so we knew that our Grand Chief was sick. And so we're hurrying to get there. And we had gone through Marquette, Michigan, and, we're going on that Highway 2, and we're going on it to get to Bad River. And we went to a little rest stop, and we were kind of getting ourselves together. And we heard, the Grand Chief has arrived. Says, "You guys hurry it up. I have some things I'm doing in town." So here we go. We walked all that ways. We grabbed that bucket, and by this time, there's probably 40 plus walkers, and we're going at a clip. And Josephine's in the car honking her horn, and we finally make it there to Madei Joaquin, the beautiful earth of our Medewan Lodge. And it's really beautiful to take that water and pour that out, that sacred water that has gone so long. And all the tobacco ties that people gave to us on our staff, we cut those off, and that went into the sacred fire. So Josephine said, funny thing, she says, as we were walking, this elder man comes up, and he said, "Josephine, I'm really happy to see that you walked around our lake. And I had dreamed that you did that." Oh. She says, "In fact, I dreamed that you walked around all the Great Lakes." Oh my goodness. Thelma, did you hear that? And they start laughing a little bit. "Ningal ijichigayan," we can do that. So we planned for the next walk. This time we're walking around Lake Superior, and that's kind of Sault Ste. Marie area, and you know, it was really, really good because as we went through Cedarville, the place where I currently live, there was an elder there, and his name was Francis Pashut Dutcher, and he made a salve, and I made it with him, and it was a healing salve. You put it on your legs, and your legs don't feel like cramping up. Or your hand, we actually had a handkerchief tied on here because sometimes your hand would get tired and the medicine would have to be massaged into your hands to keep walking. So he said, hey, let's invite him to our house. So we did. I made a great big giant pot of the best corn soup I could. The corn that came from the East Coast, you know, the good stuff. I put venison in there, and you know, really they made my best fry bread, and you know, gave them things to eat, and they really had a good feast, and sent on their way. So then they're on their way, and one thing that they had to do is they had to cross the Mackinac Bridge. Well, no one can go on foot crossing the Mackinac Bridge until when? Until Labor Day. So I called the governor's office and I said, we would like the bridge closed down so that we can walk across it. You know, it's like 5 miles. And yes, it can be done. So we did our permits, and only 4 could walk across, and the rest would drive across the bridge and be waiting. And so you can imagine early morning, I think it was like 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and the walkers have their staff. Mario Wasagijik is there, and they're carrying this, and we were at the other end of the one, and we're drumming our songs. We're singing, way-oh, 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 way. We're singing the AIM song, and as they're walking across, and it was really, really cool. So we're walking across there and walking quite a ways, and we come to a rest stop, and at the rest stop is where Francis brings out the best fried whitefish you ever ate. You know, his shrimp and pea salad and fry bread, and you know, they got feasted really well. We visited a school where the children would walk with us. They do honor songs, and they would honor, you know, all the water walkers, and we loved it when our children came with us. I mean, they were allowed to carry the bucket. They were allowed to walk with us, and that was a good thing. You had elders there, some that could only go maybe a few steps, you know, but they wanted to be involved, or they'd be on the side of the road just giving us that good sign, you know. So we walked around those lakes. And the one lake I didn't walk around was Lake Erie. And Grandma Josephine said that when she got that bucket of water, she actually weighed the water, how much it weighed. And Lake Erie is full of so much pollutants that was really heavy water to walk with. And that's what she said about that lake. And all the lakes were different. Where you started your walk, where you ended your walk, and the community support, and you know, the songs that were sung, the ceremonies, the Grandmother Moon ceremony, and the camaraderie with people that learned to love each other as much as they loved the water. That was the most wonderful thing. So we did the walks around each of the Great Lakes, and one of the last walks that I was on was at Matthias, Maine. And Josephine said, well, we walked around all the lakes, you know, from the Hudson Bay River and all the way across. Why don't we walk in the 4 directions? So go as far north as you can with a group of women, you know, far in the outer northern territories, walk from Washington State, and walk from the Gulf of Mexico. And we'll walk from Machias, Maine. And yeah, well, I'm from Washington State, so I'm going to go to Machias, Maine. I've never been there. And I heard there were beautiful petroglyphs there, and I wanted to see them. So I was engaged at that time to Pedro Guanacayo Torres, who is a cacique of his tribe, the Taino tribe. So he takes his bus and he takes his cabs and takes a train to get over there. And the only thing is, if you're a water walker, you support yourself. Your own transportation, your own food, your everything about it. And he called for a ride and he didn't get one, you know. And I said, I want to visit my friend on this Indian island. All right, good, get out. So I was let off at a gas station. And my friend, her phone didn't work. Somehow they picked me up and we were able to join the walk. And it was like incredible, the amount of energy. The young men carried, I think Grandma Josephine's grandson carried the staff. And we started out at Machias, and they were petroglyphs as big as this whole room. And it had little indentations in there of the constellations and things like that. And we took our shoes off as we walked upon those sacred rocks. There was even a chair, they called it the Medewan chair, that you could sit on. There was petroglyphs of babies being born, petroglyphs of the other people, the Star Nation, coming here to visit. But it was like, it was wonderful. And then we started out, we went to a place where we offered our tobacco, and there's a film about that with Grandma Josephine when we're doing that and beginning our walk. Well, I couldn't walk very far. You know, we have water pollution. There's water pollution, there's air pollution. And there's so much arsenic that was in that water that I could barely breathe. And they said if you go into boats, the water is so bad here that you're not allowed to eat the fish. And the deer there, they have cancer in their organs, so you can't eat the deer. You have to eat a moose or a big animal. And the elders tried their best to make their gardens. They got imported soil, and they used good water to water their plants. But there comes a time the rain comes, and the poisons come on their vegetables anyway. But they tried the best they could. But I decided, all right, I'm going to go with the community, with the tribe here. And I went to the museum and talked with them. And they talked about a holy mountain called Mount Katagan. And it was a beautiful mountain. In our creation stories, we hear about Grandmother Moon when she was a woman, when she walked the earth, that she would be on the top of that mountain and she'd be talking with her grandson. And they would be talking about all the questions he had. And it was a very holy place. So Pedro and I went to the bottom of that mountain, and I did the water ceremony, smoked my pipe, and he left a rock offering of piled up rocks. And he said, someday we'll return. And many places along Turtle Island are sacred places. And when you go to communities, they'll tell you about these things. And then our creation story gets bigger because it's being shared. And when we get to our lodges, we can tell our children about those stories and who told it to us. And that becomes part of our history. And we know history is good, and we know water is life because they brought our ancestors here, and they're still living. There was a time when we were called to Standing Rock by the Standing Rock tribe. They said they are going to build a pipeline, and they're going to build it through our cemeteries and through our reservation area, and we need help defending this. We need peaceful people, water protectors to come out here. And so there was a time on the news where I had heard that some of the water protectors were being attacked by these vicious dogs. They were being hurt. And my chief of the American Indian movement, Dennis Banks, now a comic, he said, we want you to come to Standing Rock. So me and my friend, we said, okay, we're going to go there. And you couldn't just go in there by the road that goes to Standing Rock, because there's guards, doppel guards that won't let you in. And so I said, okay, I'm going to pray for invisibility, and we were able to make it in to the gate at Standing Rock. And you look down that gate, and you can see all the flags of over 300 Indian nations that are lining up flag row. And we called Dennis Banks. Dennis, we're here. Where are you? He said, go to the end of flag row, and I will meet you there. So we drove very carefully, and we're looking at all the tents and teepees and yurts and people walking and, you know, sacred fires here, songs here, children riding horses. And so we go to the very end, and there he is with a couple of chiefs. Oh, this is my friend Beatrice and her friend. Go put up her tent. So here's the chiefs. And they're putting up our little tent. And that was really nice. So one of the days at Standing Rock, we were invited to go to the Standing Rock School. And here's all the children of the Peaceful Water Protectors. And they have a school, they have different lessons. And so they said, Beatrice, would you come and tell the creation story? And I said, I would love to. So I get out my smudge, and, you know, I get out my eagle feathers, and, you know, the children are all sitting there pretty quiet, and there's their parents around there. So I tell them about the story of creation, and I tell them about the lowering of 4 of the men, the black man, the white man, the yellow man, and the red man, and how the red man would not come to earth to do his work. He wanted to stay with our Creator. And so the Creator gave him his thoughts and caused strawberries to grow upon the earth as evident proof of his love. And that's just a little tiny bit of our sacred story. And then I told the children, I said, you know, there was a time when earth was so full of water that the earth had to spin, and it was able to finally, you know, first man was lowered onto the back of a water being, and he came to the earth. And when he came to the earth, it was so beautiful. He did not want to harm a blade of grass. And so he stood on tippy toes, and he was like a helium balloon, and he landed there. And where he landed, the sacred herb that we use, sweetgrass, grew there. And that's why it's so sacred to us. And so I taught the children the water song. And they sang it in the little beautiful voices of, you know, the ones that 2 and 3 and 4 on up. And then one little boy stood up and he says, hey, can't we have that song in our language? I would really like it in our language. I'm thinking, the youth, they're so vocal. And I said, yes, we can do that. But first we're going to go to the water, and we'll have a bowl of tobacco, and you can put it in your hand, and you could give thanks for the water. I said, okay. So the fathers would put their kids on their shoulders, and we would walk. And the whole Standing Rock is watching the children walking to the water, and they're singing, Nipi Gizageiku, and they're offering their tobacco, you know, and they're doing this wonderful thing. And we come back, and this one little boy, he's on the back of his dad. He says, how come you get to ride up there? Because when we acted out our story, I was a medicine man. And the kid said, well, you're not a medicine man. Well, I'm going to be. That was really cool. But the next day was my birthday. It was October 14th. And I'm telling my friends, they want this song in Lakota. And let's go to the casino and let's ask the elders. So there's a bunch of elders, ladies that were sitting there. And it was this one woman, it was her birthday. And I said, it's my birthday too. And I have a birthday request. And Miss Wilson, and What is it? Well, I'd like you to translate the water song into Lakota. I don't know about that. Just kind of, and some of the women are looking up. Ooh, song in our language. So she did that. I went back to the school and I gave it to the children because the children were like that same little Ojibwe boy that wanted a song in Ojibwe. Here's a Lakota boy. So we taught it to the children and then we taught it to the elders. And it goes, Meni Dahila, Meni Wapita Ichichia, Meni Wahela Hey. So the rest of the time at Standing Rock, whenever we got up at 4:30, same as Josephine did, we went to the sacred fire, offered our tobacco, smoked our pipe, sang the water song, and we would give out little cups of water as we did this. And as we walked to the Cannonball River, some woman would be carrying this bucket for a while. And in our teachings, a woman who doesn't understand the water until she carries the water. So all the women took turns. And if they saw you out there, they would fill this with water and they would give it to you. And all the while they'd be saying, "What is life?" And it would come back, "Water is life." And we sang a lot of faith songs along the way. We had a faith song that we sang, and it is a song that goes, when I rise, let me rise like the birds with no regret, joyfully. When I fall, let me fall like the snow with no regret, joyfully. And when I stand, let me stand like the trees with no regret, eternally. When I pray, let me pray at the waters, Miniwachoni, joyfully. When I sing that song, I think of all the people at Standing Rock, peaceful water protectors, and how it felt to go there in peace, to pray for our water, to pray that we don't have oil in our water. And the last time that we were at Standing Rock, they're saying there's going to be no pipeline. Let's celebrate. And so they had a big ceremony at the center, and sage was being burnt, and everyone was in joy. And the next morning at 4:30, people still got up. They got up, smudged, got their tobacco, drank their sacred water, and they walked to the Cannonball River to pray. And by that time, there were like 350 water protectors. And they looked beautiful. And the women couldn't wait to come to the front to carry this sacred bucket of water and to give the prayers that we have from Standing Rock to that Cannonball River. And the songs were incredible. And we sang this song and the sun was coming up. And I remember how beautiful it looked over the mountains over here. And on that side of the mountain, you see the Doppel people, Dakota Access Pipeline people, with their guns pointed at us, and their lights and their planes hovering on us. And as we're praying, they came by and they dropped poison on us. And it was sticky. We had to wash ourselves. And that poison got on our snow that we washed our dishes and got onto our sacred smudge that was growing there. And it made so many people sick. And when I got home from Standing Rock, I was so sick. And you can look on CNN for Beatrice Manasseh Quay Jackson, and you'll see me. I look like a monster. I have no neck. I'm so swollen I can't even talk. And I go home, and finally a couple years ago I went ahead and I had the surgery, and they found poison in my intestines all the way through. And they said, we're going to take some of your intestines out. This is kind of horrible, but I said, well, you can't take it all. I need some. So they took out a foot of my intestines, and they said, you would have never healed. And if your intestines break one more time, you had sepsia, and the poison was shutting down your organs, you would die. So now I am all well. I'm still water protectors. And we've come out here to Kalamazoo. We prayed for the water out here. We had a beautiful water ceremony with the indigenous grandmothers. We spoke at your university. Many people, like the Pokagon Potawatomis, they have a sacred water walk around their lake in their own communities. I go out to Boston, and they'll have a peaceful place that they pray, and they'll ask me to come there to do the water songs and pray, and I would do that. I went to the Peace Pagodas, and these beautiful people, these Buddhist people, they pray 24/7. You young people know that means 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And their head man was sick, and they were told to wash all the Buddha statues. It's all in sequence order of his lifetime. And then they asked me to go and pray for the water. So I'm in this beautiful temple. It's all beautiful gold colors and, you know, little beauty everywhere. People in these robes and everything. And they said, can you do the water ceremony? I said, not in here. We got to be at the water. So this is a conclusion. So I am a sun dancer. And at Sundance, guess who asked me to sing it in Japanese? The Japanese women. I says, I don't know your language. You write it. You write it. We'll sing it. We'll put it to music. And so we did. So here's the song. Let me see what it is. Miso yo ashite maso, miso yo arigato, miso yo tataimasu. So we sang that at Sundance, and the men said, probably not the right words, probably not beautiful enough. So I brought it to the Peace Pagoda, and I taught all the Peace Pagoda Buddhists this song. And they came with that song, and one by one, they got on their knees, and they put their heads down really low, and they offered water to that pond with all the lily pads there. It was so beautiful to see everyone singing that song, you know, Miso yo ashite maso. So at the very end, everyone knew the song, and all of us, there was about 50 of us, sang that song, and it was in our heart that we wanted that water to heal. We wanted those people that are sick to heal, the same as we want our people with COVID to heal. So we sang that song, and then the lily pads started glowing. The water was sparkling, and all the trees lit up in yellows and oranges and red, and it was so beautiful. And I said, well, I guess it was sung beautifully enough, because water is life. Wherever you go, whatever language that you speak, however old you are, from my 2-year-old great-grandson to the oldest ones of 109, everyone can pray for the water. Everyone can tell the water, thank you, I love you, water, I respect you, water. Water is life. And you do that. You know, if we had 350, what if we had 350,000 people doing this on World Water Day? What if we had all the world and all the nations singing this song in their language? And what if we looked at our water? What do we need to make you healthy? How can we help? We love you, water. We thank you, water. We respect you, water, because water is life. Water is life. Minnie Wachoni. That's all I'm going to tell you for right now. But water protectors are everywhere, of every color, every size, every age. And they are passionate about our water, that we want to live. We are going through a COVID crisis right now. The water that they drink, they prayed for it and drank it. We would see healing happening. We would see all of our water and lands, becoming great again, beautiful again. The ones who started this virus, we can see that being wiped out. And we can open this museum again. We can have all these beautiful things shared that our ancestors left behind. And we can share in this beautiful, beautiful thing called life.
People of Flint suffered horrible man-made disaster, and their drinking water was contaminated back in 2000.
My name is Kathy Woosterbarth, and I live in Oscoda, Michigan, near the former Wurtsmith Air Force Base. I'm one of the leaders of the Now Need Our Water Community Action Group. This is Vanetton Lake in Oscoda, and this is YMCA camp on the lake, and this is the former Wurtsmith Air Force Base beach in which I worked and which was popular for many families in the area. A few years after working at that beach, I developed cancer and an immunological disease. Of course, at the time, I had no idea that I was exposed to these toxic chemicals. Now we know. These red areas show the plumes that are moving for the PFAS chemicals. And even now, the U.S. Air Force is pumping water from the ground here into a nearby creek, which is pumping into Lake Huron, which is the drinking water source for thousands of people in our area. I'm concerned that this contamination will not get cleaned up. We're still being exposed to it, and every moment we are fighting to get this remediated from the ground and surface water. In the meantime, our children and our friends and our families are developing cancers, kidney disease, thyroid disease, and it's altering us at a cellular level. How will this get cleaned up if the Air Force doesn't do it? These are questions that people are asking. We are scared and we need answers. We need the help of the federal government and our state governments to protect our health. That's their job.
15. They and their pets were poisoned. Some even died. But sometimes from disaster shines the light of human compassion. And here, the light has come from the hearts of children.
Hi, I'm Michael Plunky. I'm 13, 7th grade, and I started coming here about 3 weeks ago. And when my first time here, I kind of felt really good because I really love helping people, and you can really tell that people are going through some tough times. So when I'm here, I love helping. And it's a great thing that people are doing to help them. Yeah, and it's awesome because we've had Air Force come and we've had people come out, like some people out of the country come and help, and it's been pretty cool. And I've made a lot of new friends. And here in Flint, there's been a big crisis about the water, and there's been a lot of lead, and people have been getting sick. And now people can't use their water because it'll get them sick, even if they like wash their hands and stuff. So what we're doing, we're getting a lot of donations from places, and people come and we give them water, and it's just really helpful and awesome to do it because it makes you feel great. And I love helping people when they need help, and it's just awesome. Hopefully soon the water crisis will be over, and I hope everyone's healthy, and I hope everyone gets better, and hopefully everyone stays healthy and stays blessed. And is that good?
Yeah, that's great.
Is it done?
Did you carry it? To try?
Where are we tossing the garbage at?
I'm Ben Reinhardt. I'm Stephen Glow. And we did this project for Flint, Michigan. We're from Gallen, Ohio. And I think the reason why we did this project for Flint, Michigan to donate water is because that we saw something that we needed to do and we did it, which is being proactive.
What are your thoughts about the water crisis here?
It's not helping at all with the world. It's just making the world a worse place to be.
If you could have one wish for the people who live here, what would that wish be?
Maybe that more people would notice that Flint is under this water crisis and a lot of people could donate water.
What would your wish for Flint be?
Just to have the water be safe to drink. The idea came from my buddy Steven, and we're both in the same class. One day we were reading a Scholastic news article about how Flint, Michigan is having that water crisis. So a few days later he comes up to me and he says, "How about we try to do this project to help Flint, Michigan?" And I said, "We're gonna have to think through it before we get the project done." So it took about a week's planning, and then we kind of got it going. It started April 4th and ended April 15th. And then we took the water up April 23rd.
How much water did you collect?
About 400 cases and about 150 gallon jugs.
I wish that I could sing my love into your precious soul, my love. Winding through the darkest spaces to keep you so low. I know that you will never hear this song I write for you, my dear. That I am sad for you, I am sad.
Granddaughter, the water can hear you. The water has memory. Nibi,
Nibi,
Wabo,
Wabo,
Endayan,
Endayan.
Nibi wabo endayan, aki misli. Nibi wabo, heya heya, heya hey, heya heya, heya ho.
Water is the life's blood of our mother, the earth. Water is the lifeblood of our own body.
Nibi wabo endayan, aki misli. Nibi wabo, heya heya, heya hey, heya heya, heya ho.
To continue to pass on the knowledge that needs to be given unto the other generations. You are the keeper of the water.
Nibi wabo endayan, aki misli. Nibi wabo, heya heya, heya hey, heya heya, heya ho.
To make the change in this life condition that we're in, that great-grandchildren will stand up to this truth of what life is about, and to live it in such an honorable way, the way ancestors came to this earth.
Nibi wabo endayan, aki misli. Nibi wabo, heya heya, heya hey, heya heya, heya ho.
Each day when the sun rises, no matter how bad the day before might have been, there's a new chance for your hopes and dreams. And I say, Chimigwech, thank you for singing the water song.
Nibi wabo endayan, aki misli. Nibi wabo, heya heya, heya hey, heya heya, heya ho.
Water understands the clouds. It knows how to caress the grass and make a river roar. It can quench the thirst of the desert or flood a farmer's field. Water understands all things. Water is life.
In 2016, my friend Mike, who runs Crossing Water, told me that the Red Cross needed help. At that time, they were trying to get to every house in Flint and take a case of water and a filter and a little door hanger, which, as you know, one case of water is not anywhere sufficient for people to live on. And so I started coming here. At that time, I volunteered with the Red Cross for a couple of weeks, and then Mike said that they were doing a water distribution site at St. Mary's Catholic Church up on North Franklin. So I started going there on the weekends and on my days off, and took some holidays to come up and help hand out water to the residents. And it was an amazing experience. It was very difficult. It was the best thing I've ever done, and one of the hardest things I've ever done. You know, listening to people's stories, talking about their children or their grandkids in the back seat that have lead poisoning, or some people would come in with rashes all over their skin. They just lost a parent, you know. It was just a horrible tragedy that was happening here. And they were confused. They were getting a lot of different messages about what they're supposed to do to protect themselves. They didn't think about their pets, for instance. And they say, my dog it's just walking in circles all the time, and it's acting really weird, and its skin's turning black. And I said, are you giving it bottled water? And, well, no. And then the light bulb goes off in their head, and they're like, oh my God, you know, what have I done? You know, I think about that all the time. If it was happening in Lansing, because it happened, it can happen anywhere. You know, that line was crossed. It's heartbreaking. You know, it's so different when you have a personal relationship with people who are actually going through something like this, where you see it firsthand, than seeing it on the TV or reading about it. It just really drives it home. You know, these are real people. This is their life. This is what they have to live with day in and day out.
Why is my water turning brown? Water turning brown, my water turning brown. Why does my baby cry at night? Baby cry at night, my baby cry at night. Dog is turning round and round, turning round and round, turning round and round. Cat is lying on the ground, lying on the ground, yes, lying on the ground. Water, there's poison in our veins, poison in our veins, yes, poison in our veins. 12 by 6 feet underground, 6 feet underground, yes, 6 feet underground. Kids have poison in their brains, poison in their brains, poison in their brains. Skin has rashes all around, rashes all around, yes, rashes all around.
it's like anything in life, any situation in life where trust has been broken by people that you should have been able to trust 100%, and that's the government. Like if you're in a relationship with someone and once they cheat on you, are you ever going to be able to trust them again? You know, you're always going to have that doubt. It's no different than that. Only this time, it was their children or themselves or their parents or their pets or whoever was seriously injured from this or died. Some people died. And that has to be traumatizing. If you can't trust your government to provide you with safe, clean water, how can you feel secure in your own home, in your own town?
Hi, I'm Andrea Hendrick, one of the founding members of the Grand Haven Energy Organization. The United States was born in one of the most exciting times in world history. The Industrial Revolution brought about more change in the way humans interacted with the environment than any other time. Mechanization of agriculture, textiles, breakthroughs in electricity, and the mass production of ships and trains transformed manufacturing. People flocked to cities where engineers and inventors thrived and built on each other's knowledge. Natural resources were plentiful, and for 2 centuries, the United States thrived on innovation and creativity. However, this came with a price. Industrialization brought with it pollution that would create almost unlivable environmental conditions. It wasn't until the 1970s that the Federal Clean Water Act finally put limits on the amount of contaminants that could be discharged into the waters of the United States. The nation began the hard work of restoring our waterways. Slowly, water quality began to improve. Please do not look at history and assume that this is a problem far away. Behind me, Harbor Island was once used as a city dump for decades. This was not just household trash. Industrial waste was dumped into the river. Later, coal ash was used as a filler to create land along the river's edge. Recently, the term beneficial fill has been used to explain the land created at Harbor Island. Let me publicly state, there is nothing beneficial about cancer-causing poisonous coal ash dumped into our waters. To this day, groundwater samples collected on Harbor Island reveal levels of boron, chloride, fluoride, sulfate, antimony, arsenic, cadmium, chromium, cobalt, lead, and lithium above the standards set by the EPA and EGLE to protect human health. Unfortunately, the Board of Light and Power spent well over $300,000 of ratepayers' money last year alone on lawyers, engineers, and lab tests to come up with ways to minimize the amount of cleanup that occurred on Harbor Island. Despite the attempts to greenwash the public, PR created words like sustainable energy future and environmental stewardship. The facts about Harbor Island have been revealed. Our city leaders have a chance to rewrite the wrongs that have occurred on Harbor Island. Tomorrow at 5:30, the City Council and the Board of Light and Power trustees will publicly meet with an attorney to discuss strategies for cleanup. For at least the last year, the Michigan Environment, Great Lakes and Energy Department has been asking the Grand Haven Board of Light and Power for adequate monitoring of groundwater contaminants. The Board of Light and Power has ignored these requests and continues business as usual. It took huge efforts by the community activists just to get the truth about that out to the BLP, or out to the community. Without these efforts, I guarantee the conversation would happen behind closed doors. We have to hold our elected officials accountable. The handling of Harbor Island has huge implications for the future of Grand Haven. We have to challenge our elected officials to be forward-thinking and not force the responsibility onto the next generation. If we don't, who will? So today, I speak for the water, I speak for my children, and I speak for the residents of Grand Haven, who trust our elected officials to do everything possible to protect them. Join the movement. Visit ghenergy.org to learn more about the future of Harbor Island and how you can get involved in protecting our water in Grand Haven and the Tri-Cities area.
Let's go ahead and Jamie, let this run for a little bit. Jill, I'm gonna let this run for a little bit. I want to talk to you a little bit about this.
Sure.
So why did you get involved in the Harbor Island issue?
Well, I was informed. I went to school for urban planning, sustainable urban planning, and had paid attention to some of the contaminants that were visible and publicly made available to Grand Haven using GIS. And Harbor Island is one of the most contaminated sites. So after communication about the coal plant going down, I started paying attention, hoping, oh wow, we're moving in the right direction. And started learning that the Board of Light and Power was making plans to redevelop, and it was happening without any community engagement. And I learned that they were holding meetings in a small office building, an industrial area, with no live streaming and very minimal public engagement. And I met some people that were involved, and the more that I started hearing facts, I was like, we've got to do something about this.
So what would be the biggest win for you, do you think, or the group in general? Because I'm part of the group too. Huh?
Yeah.
So can you talk to our audience a little bit? What's our win? Because in my mind, being an environmentalist and a water protector, my mind is let this river sit. Do not add anything else out here. Especially, we don't want the natural gas plants that they're talking about. We need this delta to sit here and relax a little bit after everything it's been through. But what do you think would be a win?
Yeah, I think the biggest win would be for this to go to the public, for us to be able to have conversations with our kids, with our community about what we really want to happen there. And that win would be having a genuine two-way conversation where the people of Grand Haven have real say about what happens on Harbor Island, and not just in let me listen to you and then I'll tell you what we're going to do there, but in a genuine, all right, community, what do you really want here? Let's take some time and let's pull in some experts and let's pull in the community to figure out what we want to be when we grow up.
Yeah.
And figure out if that power plant is actually
And
in that
I'd like
picture.
to see Grand Haven look forward, not
Yeah.
backwards. And that's what I feel like.
Absolutely.
If we're putting more fossil fuel infrastructure in place, you can hear the geese. You can hear this beautiful willow that we're in front of today, and this beautiful sunshine is all in danger. You know, I look at the water out here, and yeah, this time last year, this was all underwater because of the high lake levels. But what we have left here is beautiful, and it's worth saving. So thank you to you and grandhavenenergy.org. And yeah, I'll be helping you guys out a lot more once the festival is done. So thanks for taking the time to come over today.
Yeah,
And
it's
thank
great.
you,
Thanks
Dallas.
for all your advocacy.
So thanks. Everyone, it's Shannon, Lakeshore Shannon, Shoreline Shannon, whichever. And I just wanted to say again, thank you for all of you who have been watching the posts on Facebook, who have been watching our live video today from YouTube. I know I kind of did a costume change on you here, but it's gotten nice and sunny and warm here. We're getting close to 60 degrees, if not there already. So I'm enjoying this beautiful sunshine. It's Michigan though. We could end up with a blizzard and a winter weather advisory tomorrow, so who knows. So I am taking advantage of the sunshine. I wanted to share with you something that I was gifted yesterday from a dear friend of mine. She's kind of my water protector camp sister. This canvas was a piece of artwork that was kind of started in 2017 at an event called All Hands on Deck. And everyone who participated in that event, almost everyone, took turns coloring in the lakes, putting messages of water protection on our canvas. Hi there. And it's grown over the years, and it's just a beautiful piece of work. And so we were gifted. We've gone from 2017 All Hands on Deck to our 2021 Water Protection Week for International World Water Day. So I think that this is one of my most precious and treasured gifts that I was given yesterday. I was also given the gift of friendship and kinship with a lot of people yesterday, and I hope that as you all explore World Water Day and explore the water that you live by, that you are also given the gift of beautiful days like this, the sound of the birds, the sound of the water, the sound of the waves. And I hope that those watery waves and the watery sounds and the winds and the breezes and the sounds of our four-legged and two-legged and feathered friends become your lullaby here on the Lakeshore, because there's really nothing like it. So I have a couple more live streams to make, and then we'll be saying goodbye until next year. The auction goes until midnight tonight, so you've got about another 8 hours. If you see something you like, be sure and mark in the comments. Hey everyone, it's me, Shoreline Shannon, here for our last live shot, well, second to last live shot of the day. I am here socially distanced with my very good friend and incredible young man that I met a couple years ago. His name is Andrew Nowicki. He's the chair of the Michigan Democratic Party Environmental Caucus. He's an environmental educator by trade. And he's just fascinated, and he's got a lot of really great information about the environment. So, Andrew, I wanted to ask you, first of all, thanks for driving all the way over here from Lansing. And it's been a year, other than Zoom, that we've actually seen each other person to person. So it's like, yay, I'm glad you're here. Welcome to the Lakeshore. When you think of valuing water, which is the UN's theme for this year, for World Water Day, what do you think of valuing water? What do you think the value of water is?
Well, I think both those questions actually have a little bit of a different answer. So when I think about valuing water, what it really reminds me is that everything in the environment is connected. And I think this is almost like an overused statement where everyone kind of knows, like, hey, everything's connected, so and so. But when you really think about it, it means that where you are right now, wherever you live, wherever you work, whatever place that you're interacting with, even if you don't get outside your house because of COVID and you're sitting there on Zoom, the actions that you are undertaking are impacting the world around you, and the way that we manage the landscapes are impacting the environment and the community in a greater area too. So changes, if you are fortunate enough to either manage land or have control over land in your area, the actions that you undertake are going to impact the types of wildlife and things that live in a wetland, maybe a mile, maybe sometimes farther away than that. So really everything does have a direct impact directly on that ecosystem and on the way that the water interacts with the world. So plants, I think we all know this. If you've got house plants or if you have a garden, you know plants need water. You have to pour water over to your plant. Plants pick it up through their roots, and the cycle continues. But what that means that plants do and function is that the plants act as kind of like a straw, where they're soaking up water from not super deep in the ground, not like aquifer deep, but they're soaking up water like a straw, and they're bringing it back up to the surface into their leaves. And as the days go on, they're losing some of that water through their leaves the same way that we lose water through our breath. If it's a really cold day and you breathe and you see the cold evaporation coming off from your breath, plants are doing the same thing. And so when you're thinking about like wetlands and what kind of plants that you have in your area relative to, let's say, a flood or an extreme rainfall event, the water level fluctuates quite a bit. And the more plants that you have in that area, they act like a sponge. They're literally a straw. They pull water up from the ground and they're taking it out through their leaves and they're losing it that way. So if you have wetlands in your area, if you have a forest in your area, those kinds of things make that area less prone to flash floods, extreme changes in the way that the water goes up and down, just by having those plants there versus not having them there. Something else is that as the plants are doing this, they're doing all these different kind of chemical processes, and they're picking up nutrients from the ground, and they're metabolizing it, they're making it into all these different kinds of things. Lots of different types of animals eat plants, lots of different types of plants make different types of chemicals, and there's kind of this whole layer of chemical warfare going on with plant life that we don't really see going on as people. And that chemical warfare is designed by the plants to try to protect them, make sure they're not going to get eaten by lots of bugs, lots of herbivores. But as a side of that, it ends up making those types of chemicals that end up being used for medicinal purposes for people. It makes them have, some of them have a lot more nutrients that are good for people to eat. It also has the opposing effect. Some of them have chemicals that make us really itchy if you touch them. You don't want to touch poison ivy and get the oils on your skin. All these are done by the plants as a way of protecting themselves, but sometimes they end up actually being helpful for the things that eat them too. And while that's going on, they're picking up all these different things from the soil, and some of them might be pollutants, some of them might be these forever chemicals, these chemicals that otherwise are going to cause harm to people. They're going to be poisoning your water, things that are going to make people sick. And when you have plants acting as these straws that are sucking up these chemicals from the water, sometimes they're actually filtering them out. And if you have too much pollution, you get plant deaths, you have a lot of negative impacts in the ecosystem. But at a certain level, the plants actually act like a filter, and they do this for free, naturally, all the time. They're constantly cleaning and soaking up our water and doing these processes for us. Now, Shannon, I know your other question was about how is it that we value water, and I think there's really a lot to unpack there, because as a society, everything that we kind of use in terms of the government and calculations all revolves around money. We don't really talk about things in terms of how much human health really matters. How much does the landscape really matter? Does this landscape right here, is this beautiful? Does that actually matter in our system? And in the way that at least the government functions at right now, and the way that a lot of businesses work, is that even if we do value something like beauty, we might value something like human health, we only value it in as many terms as we can put a price tag on it. So there actually is a price tag for your health, for your scenic view, and for your actual life. So the EPA, the way they calculate it, is they use a value of $10 million. So according to the EPA, your life is worth about $10 million. And then they look at a given area, they look at how many people do we have in this area, they're all worth $10 million. And maybe there's some kind of a project or some kind of pollution that's going on, and we have a right to pollute in America. You don't have a right to clean water, but you do have a right to pollute the way that our legal system is set up. And so you have a right to pollute, and each person in this given area is worth $10 million. So what the EPA does is they calculate how much money would it cost to get equipment to pollute less. And then for the reduction in pollution of that equipment, is it worth each life that it's going to be saved by purchasing that equipment when you calculate that each human life is worth $10 million? And then they do a cost-benefit analysis, and they decide, this is how much is really going to keep the most people safe for the best bang for your buck. So it's not really a system that's designed to think about what actually is worth it, like is it in human life, really valuing the water for what it is. It's about putting a price tag on things and trying to find different cost-benefit analysis and ways to look at that. And there's different environmental movements and different groups that kind of approach this in a different way, where sometimes environmental actors will be, they'll be lobbying and they'll be pushing for raising that cap. So instead of human life being worth $10 million, let's make it worth $15 million. And then we're going to get a whole lot more pollution cleaned up that way.
It sounds like that value played into Flint a lot, because obviously I don't think that they valued the people of Flint at $10 million a piece when they started looking. I think that's where the environment and environmental justice overlap, doesn't it? I mean, isn't that kind of a juxtaposition? Are we valuing life at $10 million a person, and is that just a people value, or what do they put the value on the geese that we hear, or the plants and the willows that are a couple hundred years old? Do they put any value on the life that isn't two-legged?
Well, different environmental economists would try to find a different way of valuing how much that ecosystem is worth. So maybe we, if we're going to value this willow tree, we might value it based on how much air is it purifying, because this tree is actually purifying air that's around it and producing oxygen. How much water is it sequestering? So if I were to have a flood event where the water level of this lake were to go up, how much water is this willow tree going to actually sequester and actually reduce that flooding so it doesn't end up taking out a neighborhood or flooding into somebody's basement or causing other kinds of trouble? And it can be difficult for an environmental economist to value one tree that way, but when they look at a whole bunch of ecosystems together, they can come out with these numbers and like how much it's worth. But the issue is that fundamentally, all these different mechanisms that scientists use to analyze the environment and analyze people is based on money. It's not based on, is a tree actually worth something because it's a tree? It's based on the tree is worth something because it does this service, it cleans our water, it cleans our air, and that is worth X amount of dollars. And when you're talking about issues like Flint, not every agency actually uses this. So even though there are ways that environmental economists will try to put a monetized value on like a human life, they don't always do that. They don't always even do that calculation to begin with. Sometimes they just ignore it. I found that oftentimes a lot of these projects, they just completely ignore the value of any kind of environmental service and the value of people and the value of public health. And also, the EPA uses about $10 million to value human life. A lot of different federal agencies actually use a much lower value than that. So depending on the industry, depending on what it is that they're analyzing, they have different numbers that they use to evaluate how much a project is worth in terms of safety. And the EPA is actually one of the higher ones at $10 million, which is just, that's the way the system is working right now, and it's not working. We need to be valuing more what it is that we're actually, human life for human life's sake. I think that if our country thought about things in terms of human life, in terms of how much is public health really worth, how much is human being, and not just being, but actually living well, living healthily, being able to get outside, being able to relax and not have to work every second of the day forever. I think that our society would look very different if we organized that way, instead of organizing everything around how much money does this produce, how much economic output does this produce.
Yeah, we don't really have a way to monetize the effect the environment has on mental health. I think a lot of us during the pandemic found solace in connecting with even if it was those of us that were planting a backyard garden. The mental health aspect of having a view of sparkling water, having a view of the beautiful sand dunes here along the lakeshore. I think they undervalue what that means as far as human well-being. And so there we end up with a devaluation of things that can't be bought and seen, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Water is a human right. now we're seeing the monetization of water. Where do you see, the other thing is that we're talking about environmentally is climate refugees. Can you talk a little bit about, if you've heard anything or what you know about climate refugees and how our water here is going to be affected by, as we get more people here coming towards Michigan because things are getting warmer and unsustainable where they are. What's our value going to be then?
Yeah, Michigan has a lot of water. That's the bottom line. We have a lot of water, and there are a lot of places that we're really fortunate in the world, because a lot of the world actually is undergoing water crises right now, where they don't have access to water, period. Not clean water, but the water itself is actually drying up. We're using water, pulling it from the ground or pulling it from rivers faster than it can actually be revitalized by the climate. And also, climate change is changing the way that precipitation and transevaporation happen across the planet, where there are areas that used to get so much rain that aren't getting it now, or there are areas that used to get a whole lot rain that are now getting a whole lot more rain. So the way that water is moving in the landscape is changing. And in the future, yeah, places that have this unique resource, are going to be seen as a whole lot more valuable, because it's not something that's going to exist everywhere. And I think that one thing we need to be really cautious of here in Michigan is because we're responsible for so much water. We have 2/3 of the above ground freshwater lakes value here in the Great Lakes right around us. And if we don't take care of it, and if it becomes polluted, these contaminations don't ever go away. There's a case going on in Ann Arbor right now where there was a plant that emitted a pollutant into the groundwater. This was like 35 years ago. And the scientists at the time said that if we don't clean it up, in about 20 to 30 years, it's going to leak into the aquifer, and it's going to contaminate the groundwater. Once it does that, it's there, it's stuck there. You can't just stick a filter way down into the ground and filter out all the pollutants that have been going in there. You need to stop it before it actually penetrates that aquifer. And of course, lots and lots of lawsuits were filed, lots of litigation happened, but ultimately it wasn't cleaned up. And here we are 20, 30 years later, and guess what? The aquifer is contaminated. Now that aquifer is going to be contaminated forever. And historically, what we've seen in Michigan, Nestle has done this before, is that when a groundwater source becomes contaminated, they just stop getting the water. They just leave it, because it's not worth it to have to pay to filter that water as you draw it up, because now it's contaminated with all these pollutants. Yep. So they just leave, and they just go start withdrawing from somewhere else. So every time that we do something like this, we're taking away a source of clean water, not just for ourselves now, but for generations to come. And with the thought about climate refugees, and about that lots of people are going to rely on this resource even more, so going into the future, if we don't take care of it, it's not going to be there for them. And we need to be valuing, again, not monetizing these things, but really valuing at its core human life, human existence, and human health.
Is there anything else that you would want to talk about as far as water and the environment while you're here and have a nice forum? What would you like? What didn't I ask you that you'd like to communicate?
So one of my specialties, I'm an environmental educator, and I'm also a naturalist. So I am curious about all different types of life and things that are here in Michigan, from insects to mammals to birds to fish to amphibians to reptiles, invertebrates, all sorts of different things. There's a red-winged blackbird and some geese in the water as I'm talking right now. And wildlife in many ways is like an indicator not only of environmental health, but it's an indicator of like how is this society, how is this community doing? And a community that has a whole lot of wildlife, a whole lot of vibrant wildlife, it tells you a whole lot about that area. It tells you that they don't have so much pollution that's preventing the wildlife from existing there. It's telling you that they have enough bioproductivity to actually sustain like predators and different not higher life forms, but like higher on the food chain beings. Because if you look at the ground anywhere where you are, plant life is the base of, at least in Michigan, of all the food chain systems that we have here in Michigan. And every time that an animal eats another animal, a lot of the energy is lost through that organism being alive and burns heat. So like our body temperature is maintained at a certain rate, and we're constantly burning off heat. So when that energy gets transferred up the food chain, it's not a 100% transfer, right? So if you've got like a wolf that's eating a rabbit that was eating the grasses, the energy from the grasses isn't going directly into the wolf. Some of that energy is being lost from the rabbit living and being and running and doing all the things that a rabbit does. And what that means for an ecosystem is that you need a lot of plant life and a lot of productivity. That's the word ecologists use, is bio productivity. Or primary productivity too, but to maintain that entire ecosystem. And what I see when I look across landscapes in our culture is I see a lot of bright green grass that isn't really producing anything that's valuable to the ecosystem, and it's not allowing us to have any kind of wildlife. It's not doing a whole lot to filter the water. It's not doing a whole lot to filter the air. So when you have all these different things in the ecosystem and when you have a whole lot of wildlife all working together, it's a sign that this area probably has cleaner water. This area probably has cleaner air. The area is probably healthier to drink. People might have a better mental health because they're able to access the outdoors and be able to go out and do these things. And think too that it goes the other way too. When you have an area that is polluted, when you don't have a lot of wildlife, when you don't have a lot of frogs in your area, these animals are what we would call environmental indicators of poor environmental health, which also leads to poor public health. So if I've got a pollutant, let's say like nitrates or phosphates, for example, which is something that, if you're not familiar, this is like fertilizer, which fertilizer is not in many cases, it's not necessarily chemically manufactured. It's not something necessarily synthetic. Fertilizer is something that produces anytime something poops. That you can spray manure on something and the plants will help it soak it up and they'll grow. But when you have too much of a chemical, it can become a pollutant in an area. And if you have nitrates and phosphates in your water, which come from things like animals pooping and applying those bright green things to certain lawns and golf courses and the ways that we manage our landscape, that becomes a source of pollution. It's actually, the EPA has a standard number that says this is how much value of this chemical you can have in your water before it's unsafe for you to drink. But for that value, amphibians will be affected by that pollutant at a much lower value. So let's say that I don't remember exactly the top of my head, but I believe for nitrates it's something like 6 parts per billion, and for frogs it's like 3 parts per billion. So
sorry, there's one little goose that's going up. It's like not going with the rest of the group. Sorry.
So if you have a problem in your water, the frogs are going to start being sick and start having issues much quicker than the humans are because they're being impacted at a much lower concentration. So when you look at an area and you see the wildlife is suffering, the wildlife is not doing well, it's a sign that you have an issue here that might end up causing a public health crisis. So it's kind of like your early warning system to be keeping an eye out for. So I'd like us all to be mindful of the landscape that we live in and mindful of our decisions that we make. And I guess I have another point, I can keep going, is that when we talk about like the monetization of everything in our society, I used that number before. I said like the EPA will have like a number. They'll say this is how much is safe for you to drink in an area. The regulations on clean drinking water for like a municipality don't always match the level that's actually safe for bodily consumption. And I think a really good example of this is lead. The scientists have all said that the safe level of drinking water, of lead in your drinking water, is 0. There's no level of lead that's safe in your drinking water. But a lot of different cities across the state, across the country, they all have lead in their drinking water. And they have a small amount. It's smaller than their recommended. They have a number in which they call it elevated, where this legal action comes in, but it's still unsafe. But they have it based on that calculation again of that each human life is worth $10 million, and this level of lead it costs this much money to get rid of, which means that this is going to be, and so forth. And they calculate everything based on that, which is unfortunate. I think it leads to a lot of the problems that we see, where even when you think that you're safe, it's not really as safe as it ought to be. It's still dangerous.
Well, I'm very glad you made the trip over, and I could talk and listen to you all day. I would love to just like chat and say, here we are out on Harbor Island, and this is what's going on, and I'll show you where all the cool ash plants were and everything like that. But we are going to wrap up our festival today. Jay, you want to turn the camera bring the camera with me here. So I'm just gonna go out on the dock because I love the water and that's where I'm going. So if you watch it, you can go on. So, Jamie, don't trip though. Hey everybody. You can probably hear the wind on the camera at this point. I think it's a little early for frogs considering we had iceberg out on Lake Michigan last week. But I want to get out on the water as far as I can for you guys. So you can see, I'm gonna have Jamie pan the camera over there where we are. You can see over there, that's stuff that's been brought in on very large barges and ships from Lake Michigan. This is actually we're in a pond right now on Harbor Island, but we're actually Grand River is right over on the other side over there. And if you scoot around this way, right straight ahead of me is some of the ash piles left from the coal burning power plant here in Grand Haven, the Board of Light and Power's power plant. It's been shut down for a while, and the smokestack has actually been demolished and brought down, and we're still left with byproducts of that. So I can't tell if that's a creature, if that's one of our, oh yep, a little muskrat just went over there. I just saw one of our little water friends. I wonder where he went. I think it was a little muskrat. We can see a lot of wildlife out here still, like Andrew was talking about. But I wanted to say goodbye from one of the prettier places here in Grand Haven. It's just gorgeous out here. And I can't tell you all how much it meant to me sharing these last couple days with you. The water here is incredible. Water everywhere is incredible. Water is life. It is in our veins, it is in our bodies, it is a part of us. And we are a part of it. And so it's really, really important to us and the environment, the world we share. Not only those here on the Lakeshore, but it's World Water Day. And we need to consider those communities that don't have accessible and affordable drinking water. Our brothers and sisters over in Flint, over in Detroit, over in Washtenaw County, over along the St. Clair River where erosion dropped millions of chemicals and polluted riverbank last year right into the St. Clair River. Look at a map of the Great Lakes, my friends. It includes Lake Superior. And if you look at just the water, you might see the profile of a woman praying. Lake Superior being her face and the profile of her face and her hair. And the lakes look like a woman praying. You'll never see the lakes look the same again. So take a look around you, take a look at the environment around you, look for those healthy indicators that Andrew was talking about. Be still and know. Be still and listen. The sun's gonna set pretty soon on our lakeshore here, a couple hours. We'll all go out about our business tomorrow. But tomorrow is World Water Day. It's a day set aside for the water. Take a look at your role in preserving it. Take a look in the circle of life around you. Go sit on the shoreline. Go listen to the waves lapping up against the dock like they are here. Talk to the water. Respect the water. Love the water. Pray for the water. Pray for each other. And I hope to see more of you next year for Lakeshore World Water Day Festival. Peace, everyone.